I've had a lot more time on my hands recently for, well, reasons, and due to this I spent even more of my life on video games, and as a result I've been finding my usual games a bit stale, and I've begun replaying some old games, trying to get into ones I never found very engaging, and also trying out a host of new ones. But nonetheless, I've got something relating to this, a game review, so grab a drink, a snack, sit back, and listen to the review of Imperator Rome. I started this with a 300-word Steam review, but thought that I'd missed out the actual reasoning behind my opinions and key examples to illustrate my points, and it quickly ballooned into a ramble. I hope you enjoy, and if you want the conclusion, please skip ahead to the time on screen. And if you want the actual meat of the review, the end of the preamble, it's at this time. And for those of you here from Steam, I hope you enjoy the format. If you'd like to stick around for more reviews, history videos, or anything else that really takes my fancy, that would be lovely. And if you want to have a look at my Steam reviews, you can find me at GPT1904 on Steam. The problem with Paradox games. This game requires patience and time, the sort of time most people, other than hardcore Paradox fans and masochists, reserve for things like sleeping, talking to family members, and doing other normal human activities. And it has a lot of quirks as well. A bad tutorial, and is in the best case more difficult to learn than the other Paradox games, or alternatively is massively overcomplicated. Take your pick. This in general has been an issue I've had with them, needing to play for around 10 hours or so before starting to enjoy, although I found them in general the most long-lived of all the games in my Steam library. Something about a polished grand strategy game really allows me to sink hundreds, and in a few cases thousands, of hours into the games, so needing 10 hours to get into them is nothing if not acceptable. However, there is undoubtedly a massive issue for people who casually play games such as this. If you're someone looking to get into strategy gaming, I wouldn't recommend this game for you. Instead, I'd like to direct you towards CK2. It's free, most importantly, and it's a masterpiece of work that'll teach you everything you need to know about the Paradox formula. Since starting to replay it, I changed my opinion on this game massively. I had initially stated it was less fun than playing with a tennis ball, and if you take a moment to look at my playtime, you'll see how long I spend doing very little other than video games. That's to say, I don't really enjoy playing with tennis balls, and I had previously hated this game, despised its faults, and misunderstood a lot of its positives. However, after playing this game for a further 50 hours, I've gained a respect for it. I finally enjoy it. The test bed. If you're a Paradox veteran or a snot-nosed Hoi 4 general, you'll probably recognise a lot of the features from the game and that I might talk about from EU4. This game, although is definitely its own, as I begin talking about the actual game mechanics, you should keep the fact that it is, in fact, the test bed for later Paradox game features in mind, because I think it plays an important role in why things are the way they are. First, and possibly the most important thing that you'll have likely heard of, is the population mechanics. On the lead up to its release, it was heralded by some in the community as a Victoria 3, and it's not that. Where Victoria was a game built around the population system, Imperator Rome, although they do play an important part of the game, rather than being tacked on like in Stellaris, the pops serve to limit a player's expansion. Each pop has a happiness, which, when coupled with the character loyalty, which I'll talk about in a minute, makes conquering and then maintaining your empire an interesting and constantly engaging task. Rather than EU4, which throws thousands of rebels at you whenever you conquer a province, this game has entire regions break away, migrate abroad, or integrate should you mismanage your new or old territories. It does this through a province loyalty mechanic, which can be influenced by pop happiness, the skill and loyalty of your provincial governor, and some more stuff you don't need to care about. But below 33 loyalty, the province is considered disloyal and will refuse to follow orders from the central government. Territories in disloyal provinces cannot be interacted with, blocking building construction, pot movement, and even cohort recruitment. And while at 0, it will immediately rebel. A new state will be formed, and possibly join a pre-existing one that had been annexed, and it'll either declare independence or join an ongoing independence war if there's nearby provinces that have already rebelled. It's a good game feature. It makes expansion something you have to actually think about, rather than mindlessly expanding, provided you have the military in games like EU4 and even Crusader Kings. The best thing about it is that you can do it, rather than it being overwhelmingly difficult to maintain an empire, or so easy you can ignore it altogether. It rewards careful expansion, assimilation, and colonisation. Something which the Romans did so successfully. Roughly 70% of the words in the script come from Latin, and something the Diadochi struggled with for their entire histories. Next up, characters. Now, it's worth remembering that in this game you play as a nation and not as a character or dynasty like in the Crusader Kings series. However, you can direct the actions of the leader of your nation as if you were playing them. Your relationships with other powerful political actors is important, and balancing the loyalty of different characters, families, and organisations can be difficult. You can steer the ship of state through the tyrannical iron fist of despotism, maintain a righteous and just nation, or become a kakistocracy where only the most corrupt act as power brokers. Each of these has its upsides and downsides, such as decreasing the threshold for civil wars in the case of being an arbiter, a difficulty keeping your most powerful generals, landholders, and other officials in line as an idealist, or overwhelming corruption and a serious lack of funds if you choose to go the way of corruption. Characters each have a loyalty stat modified by their power base and your choices and interactions with them. They have popularity, which directly influences their influence in the game of politics that is Imperator Rome. For example, rulers with low popularity will see their power slip away quicker than they can say, "It's treason then." And finally, corruption, my favourite mechanic in the game, a measurement of this character's willingness to engage in underhanded practices. Their greed, their bribery, and the bending of rules come in hand with this corruption. Highly corrupt characters will take more than their wage would normally be, and are likely to anger provinces under their control. All of this comes together to make a set of really great mechanics. Too many of the powerful people in your realm are disloyal, measured by the total percentage of all power in your country. You'll go into a civil war, where a proportion of your nation and all of the units loyal to the rebels will fight your government for total control. I like this mechanic, but for some people it's overly complex and unsatisfactory, the sort of micro that isn't for everyone. There are two key features of the game. I had initially intended on going in depth. These are the two key features of the game. I had initially intended on going into depth into all the major game features and highlighting some of the experimental additions, such as territory highlighting, which is still completely broken, but was added successfully into EU4. But I'd much rather make a review and try and keep it under 10 minutes, so instead I'm going to leave it here rather than making a full tutorial. And the one honourable mention that I want to make is the seamless aging mechanic introduced by this game, which was utilised excellently in CK3 to breathe a huge amount of life into their usually Spartan visual style. I'd liken this game to Stellaris 1.0 for those of you who get the reference. It's got a number of amazing features which stand on their own as innovative, fun, and interesting, if unpolished. However, you have to cut through some terrible UI. This has been revised. I prefer a CK3 style UI rather than the hybrid, but I've already mentioned that. And it's also something, there's also some pretty awful mechanics like piracy, make playing minor coastal nations nigh impossible unless you forsake naval spending entirely. I really enjoy Imperator Rome, but I still have mixed feelings about it. There's so much missed potential, but it really is a crouching tiger and hidden gem. I'd give Imperator Rome a 15. 15 out of what, you say? Well, you should spend £15 or dollars on this game, max. Get it on sale with the DLC if you can, but the base game is not worth the initial purchase of any more than that. You're not reading this review if you should continue playing for more than 30 hours, so why not take my word for it if you've not yet made up your mind? Since I finally got into Vic 2, I've had a neurotic fascination with replaying games I didn't understand or enjoy the first time round, and this is the first I can finally say that I really get. Well, other than Victoria, of course. I intend for this to be the first in a number of game reviews on my channel, and that being said, I'd appreciate feedback, as I've never written a review before and I'm always looking to improve. I've been Tomo, and this has been my talk.